is revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. It's March 11th, 2026. All right, what are we talking about today? Top stories. Top stories coming up today. Iran's strategy of shoot and hide may not be long-lived. And China's idea of world domination reveals itself to be a paper tiger. And that's how we're looking at what's happening in Iran. It was a do or die moment for the United States to knock over, I would say, one more chess piece there in global strategy against China. We got more stories coming up. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the live stream. You got to excuse the late start for me today. A number of things went down yesterday, and I was bogged down with a little bit of a stomach bug yesterday into last night, so I didn't get as much sleep as I would have liked to. But without further ado, let's read the news. We're going to start with this New York Post article. Iran targets commercial ships across the Persian Gulf, Dubai airport, and oil facilities in attacks. Iran launches multiple salvos in Tel Aviv and elsewhere, but no immediate reports of casualties. Saudi Arabia said it has destroyed 6 ballistic missiles launched toward Prince Sultan Air Base. And a U.S. major and Saudi-operated facility, and intercepted 2 drones over the eastern city of Afar al-Batan. In the strait set on fire, according to the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center, run by the British military. Extent of the damage was reported safe. Air defenses in the United Arab Emirates worked to intercept incoming Iranian fire. Since early Wednesday, Iranian attacks have killed 6 people and wounded 122 others so far. Bahrain has also reported incoming early fire Wednesday. At the United Nations, the Security Council was to vote Wednesday afternoon on the Gulf Cooperation Council resolution, according to 3 diplomats speaking on condition of anonymity. The draft resolution obtained by the Associated Press condemns Iran's attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Oil prices stay high on fears of prolonged shipping disruption. Iran attacked commercial ships Wednesday across the Persian Gulf, escalated a campaign of squeezing 2 Iranian and the world's busiest for international. Also earlier, a projectile hit a container ship off the coast of Oman in the Strait of Hormuz, setting it ablaze and forcing most of its crew to abandon the vessel. In the Indian Ocean, it has also targeted Russia, the United States, and Israel is not it or affect. They're not that concerned with the oil pressure as the United States is, and especially Donald Trump and his administration is, because of the faltering economic recovery here in the United States. Now, we got some good Let's get back to the Gulf. There's some as concerns grew about the war's effect on the strategic waterway. The American military said it destroyed 16 mine layers. Here's the issue: allow Iran to mine the Strait of Hormuz. They have in the past, but with all the Straits of Hormuz also, and people aren't even talking about this. This is the issue, and this is my issue for the longest time, including from the start of this conflict, is that the Chinese have been supplying anti-ship missiles to Iran. The issue with the Straits of Hormuz is not mines as much as it is anti-ship missiles. And so they have been firing anti-ship missiles at cargo ships, etc. Those are the projectiles mentioned in the New York Post article. But the problem with any missile firing is as soon as it is launched, that area is targeted. So these anti-ship missiles can be mobile, but most of them are fixed positions, and that could easily be destroyed. So it's kind of a run and shoot or a shoot and hide strategy by the Iranians, and this hunker down and hold tight and hoping the West, the world, will lose its resolve. That has been their strategy and their planning and their tactics since the 1979 revolution. Is they will just hunker down and try to wait it out, and popping up here and there to shoot missiles and cause havoc. It's basically terrorism affecting world oil markets. Now, what they don't understand is they might be an expert in, and as many military experts have pointed out, that when you attack Iran and you attack the religious leaders, you harden their resolve. But when you attack energy prices, you think, maybe they will think that the American electorate, the American public will blame Trump, but realistically, the American electorate will blame Iran, not Trump. So that's what they don't understand. You're screwing around with mostly Asian oil. Most of the oil is going to Asia. You don't think the Asian countries are going to be upset with Iran and the way things are going there? We'll see. Like I said, I'm not for the war. I'm not really a for the war person. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. My biggest thing is uncovering the reasoning behind the decision to strike Iran. Not like Iran didn't deserve it or anything like that, or they were just minding their own business sort of thing. That's ridiculous. I mean, Israel has their own blame. There's enough blame to go around. So, I would blame Israel. And I also blame foreign diplomacy based on false flags and things like that. I'm not going to get too much further into that. We're just going to get on to the next article here. Fox News' Tom Cotton puts Biden on notice while demanding answers on draining of nation's oil stockpile. The GOP senator says a 180 million barrel release in 2022 drained the strategic petroleum reserve to a 40-year low. This is really quite concerning, and the reasoning being is because Biden did it to lower oil prices in an election year as an election strategy. That's petty. It's not, if for some reason oil prices were surging in a non-election year and you wanted to tamp them down and you drained some of that, maybe that could be argued. But to be honest with you, a majority of that oil that was drained from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was sent to China. Joe Biden in a campaign pledge or a campaign stunt, drained our strategic petroleum reserve, gave some of it to our adversary, and made the United States less safe because of it. And I could easily go into the balloon catastrophe, but I won't do that here. Senator Tom Cotton charged that the decisions under President Joe Biden to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve could have a ripple effect as U.S. continues its war with Iran and as the Iranian government continues its chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. New York Post, the IEA to recommend release of a record 400 million oil barrels to curb soaring prices due to Iran war. The International Energy Agency is expected to push for a record 400 million barrels of oil to be released to restrain soaring prices due to the Iran war. The proposal would more than double the prior record from 2022 when the IEA member countries released 182 million barrels over a 2-month stretch following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Multiple sources told Reuters the IEA's 32 member countries are expected to decide on the proposal on Wednesday ahead of a meeting of G7 leaders chaired by France. Then some good economic news. U.S. core CPI tumbles to slowest in 4 years before Iran triggered oil spikes. While all attention is currently on Iran, today's CPI for February should not be affected by the recent surge at WTI, but March's data definitely will be. What are they talking about? They're talking about inflation. So here's the chart, and there at the very end there, I cut off the date. It shows the surge in prices due to the war with Iran. But the headline CPI rose just 0.3 month to month, lifting prices by 2.4 year over year. So that's the core inflation is 2.4 unchanged from last month. So that's good. Inflation is low. Now, the way they measure inflation also is not always due. Most of the inflation that we've been suffering through was due to the bad monetary policy by the Democrats. Why people would continue to vote for Democrats when their irresponsible fiscal policies are what hurt Americans, all Americans, the most. But we will see a rise that doesn't have anything to do for monetary policy. There's going to be a rise due to oil prices rising, and everything is changed by high energy costs. And there was a little bit of that in the Biden administration too. It just wasn't bad fiscal policy, also bad energy policy, because what happened when you move over to renewables, which is ridiculous idea for core energy needs, cursory energy, you want to power a light bulb or whatever, and you want to use solar for that or wind power for a little bit of electricity you might use. That's one thing. But betting the bank on renewables was just a bad idea. And it drove energy prices higher. And that sort of inflation affects all Americans. Okay. Just the news, Iran betting it can outlast the U.S. by holding the global energy market hostage forever. After 10 days of war, the Islamic Republic of Iran is betting on a strategy to outlast the United States and inflict maximum pain by disrupting global oil markets. Just a quick interjection here is that it's not an Islamic republic, because a republic is a state whose controlling principle is that of the people. So the majority of the the Iranian people do not guide governing principles of Iran. So it's like North Korea calling themselves a republic. They're not a republic. It's a play on words. It's is it an Islamic country? Sure, it's a theocracy. But calling things that aren't republics republics. And how do you reach republics? And it's a funny thing, the places that don't have democracy often call it as republic because back in the Roman Republic, they were appointed senators who would go out into their districts, their communities, and listen to the people. And then they would come back to the Senate and they would argue for what the people wanted. I don't even think that happens in Iran. Any case, by indiscriminately attacking the Gulf Arab neighbors who had professed neutrality in any conflict between the United States and Iran, the Islamic regime has provoked a broader coalition against it. However, it believes that by causing shortfalls in global oil supply, it can pressure the U.S. and its partners economically to sue for peace. Yeah, I think it's a bad strategy. They would have easily got more Muslims to turn on the U.S. If they didn't attack those countries. Moving on to the Federalist. What history tells us about Trump's plan to defeat Iran by air. Air power advocates have promised decisive results since the Italian general Giulio Douhet authored the command of the air in 1921. Douhet theorized that after achieving command of the air power could target an enemy's vital centers to shatter morale and to force rapid capitulation. Nazi Germany tested this idea and terror bombed Rotterdam in the Netherlands during its 1940 offensive against France and the Low Countries, killing 1,150 people and accelerating the surrender of Dutch forces the same day. However, that's not the rule. Even with vast improvements over the decades, air power enthusiasts were largely forced to admit that air power is best used in support of ground forces, since no one can argue that having boots on the ground is a sure way to force an enemy to bend to your will. Then in 1999, NATO conducted a 78-day bombing campaign against Yugoslavia to force the surrender of Serbian stronghold Slobodan Milosevic and withdrawal of forces. In Kosovo, there were no NATO boots on the ground. It was during that effort, and I spoke about this yesterday, on May 7th, that the U.S. B-2 stealth bomber dropped 5 GPS-guided joint direct attack munitions on the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, killing 3 Chinese nationals. Bad intelligence was blamed. China still holds a grudge for that error. And as I said yesterday, this is bad reporting by the Federalist, is the CIA since alluded to the fact that they targeted the Chinese embassy. Now we're going to get a little bit more into JDAM's joint direct attack munitions, which is basically a gravity bomb with a guidance system attached to it. There's more from this article. CEPs. So I want to get in. I didn't go over what the acronym CEP. It's circular explosive proximity, something like that. Which is how close a bomb falls to its intended target in feet. So the CEPs for American and Israeli aircraft and U.S. long-range missiles are routinely in the neighborhood of 30 feet or less. Depending on the system, this means that depending on the target's hardness, as few as 2 bombs would be needed to have a high confidence of destruction. This, combined with unparalleled intelligence, means that even mobile targets like the launchers, missile launchers, or regime leadership can be identified with a hit of high degree of confidence. The results can be seen most clearly in Iran's rapidly declining outbound missiles and drone fire by day 5, down 90% and 80% respectively. This feeds a virtuous cycle, greatly reducing the number of costly missile interceptors needed to protect civilian populations and infrastructure. In addition, Iran's launchers and underground missile cities are destroyed. Air sorties can be sent on other missions, such as further degrading Iranian command and control leadership. It's debatable. As in all war, we don't fucking know anything. A lot of the stuff that is being reported is either propaganda or hearsay. I'm trying to report to you what we do understand is that cargo ships are, the U.S. said they destroyed 15 or 16 mine laying vessels. Were they in the process of laying mines? We don't really know. So that's something to be concerned about. Getting back to the story, though, another worry is that American stocks of vital munitions, such as Tomahawk missiles and interceptor missiles, are being rapidly depleted. This was true in the opening hours and days of the conflict, but now, as Iran's inventory of missile launchers has been severely attrited, the demand on air defense missiles has significantly declined further, with air supremacy over Iran's skies the most common munition now used in the U.S. and Israel is the JDAM, Joint Direct Attack Munition. Inexpensive JDAM kits turn plentiful Cold War era dumb bombs, 500 to 2,000 pounders, into precision guided weapons. Like I said, the JDAM kit is a guidance kit that attaches to a gravity bomb. New York Times is the headline. China's military has quietly cut flying near Taiwan, but why? For years, China has flown military jets near Taiwan almost daily. Then they suddenly stopped, leaving analysts to wonder why. For the past 12 to 13 days, no Chinese military flights were recorded near Taiwan. The sole exception was Sunday when 2 planes were seen approaching the island. It's such a stark change from the established behavior. This gap in activity is the longest we've seen since 2021. The fall was all of more striking against the buildup of Chinese military flights over the recent years. Taiwan recorded 10 Chinese military flights a day on average last year. And on some days, the number went up into the dozens. Analysts have offered several possible explanations, including that China may be setting the stage for President Trump's planned summit with President Xi Jinping coming up next month, I believe. China may also be trying to conserve fuel as oil prices rise because of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. That's what I'm trying to say is the pressure is on China. And especially if we're successful in Iran, which is debatable, it will continue. Which brings us to our next story from the Federalist. Trump is dismantling Xi's China dream one piece at a time. China has been chasing the world title of superpower, the title of world superpower for decades. Trump is holding Xi back. Indeed, since assuming power in 2012, Xi has promoted the China dream, a nationalist narrative of national rejuvenation that envisions China supplanting the United States as the world's preeminent superpower. Central to this, to his conviction that the East is rising and the West is declining, a belief that has shaped over a decade of CCP propaganda, military buildup, and assertive diplomacy. But there's a problem with this. And this isn't just something echoed by China's propaganda. This is also echoed in the West, and especially by the elites. The East is rising, the West is declining. Let's aid, and that's what they've basically been doing, is aiding the West's decline in an effort to prop up the ascension of the Chinese communists. For years, this seems prescient. The United States, under Presidents Obama and Biden, along with European allies led by leftist leaders, has taken a path of managed decline, plagued by open borders immigration, falling birth rates, identity erosion, economic drag from green policies, which I just discussed. The COVID-19 pandemic, originating in China, halted Trump's first-term growth momentum, seemingly accelerated Xi's timeline. And that was all, you know, the reason for COVID wasn't just to stop Trump. And the reason that there is an effort to stop Trump at all is specifically because of this, is because they want the prototype, the schematic for global world government is going to be based on what China has done, because it needs to be authoritarian and it needs to be socialist. Because there won't be any jobs, so everybody's going to get UBI. And so the outlays of money to the global population is going to have to be managed. The resources are going to have to be managed. And although corporations will continue their capitalist battles, the care of the humans on the planet are going to fall to a world government, which for the most part is going to be a managed, what do they call it? It's the same thing they use for healthcare. It's the managed scarcity. Oh, we don't have a lot of food for you, so here's your rationed lifestyle, rationed healthcare, rationed food. Whether there's scarcity or not, they could always just claim there's scarcity. That's why people don't get what they need. Anyway, 2026 has brought a stark reversal. Meanwhile, Donald Trump kicked off the year by capturing China's closest ally in Latin America, Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife in a precise raid merely hours after Maduro held a meeting with high-level Chinese delegation. That was also a signal. Chinese-built defense systems suffered catastrophic paralysis during the raid, exposing significant flaws in China's military technology and marking an embarrassing setback for Xi Jinping. Trump administration has also taken control of Venezuela's oil industry, threatening China's billions of dollars worth of investments in the country and access to oil. Yet Beijing offered only rhetorical support for Maduro. No real support materialized. This lack of action exposed China's limited reach. Allies get words, not protection. Days later, Panama Supreme Court annulled long-standing contracts dating back to 1997, which included a 25-year extension granted in 2021. These contracts allowed subsidiary of Hong Kong-based CK Hutchinson Holdings to operate 2 key container ports at the entrances in the Panama Canal. By February 23rd, Panama seized control of those ports. This is seen as a victory for the Trump administration's efforts, which began in 2025 to reduce Chinese influence over the canal. And the thing about HK Holdings is that although it was relatively autonomous, that it has connections to the Chinese Communist Party, and even more so since 2019, when the Chinese communists took over Hong Kong. Trifecta culminated in late February as the United States and Israel conducted joint military strikes against Iran, successfully eliminating over 40 of the regime's top leaders, including the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. During the recent hours of the joint operation, while President Trump stated objectives for this military campaign primarily focus on Iran, it is also significantly affecting China. But the point is that this is directed at China overall. That's the purpose, I believe, of the attack. However, they don't want to talk about that. The administration isn't going to talk about that, and most pundits aren't going to talk about that because it's alluding to a world war. And I said one of the big objectives or wait and sees is that what would Russia and China do if the U.S. attacked Iran? And I think the clues were, as the Federalist rightly noted, is that when they attacked Venezuela, what did China do? Nothing. And so then I think right after Venezuela, they go, okay, let's look at the next chess piece here that is Iran. So if you're following along in the 4D chess, if we think that, I think that's what this is. This isn't just, although Trump has no love for Iran, certainly, especially the leaders that try to have him killed, et cetera. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But there's a grander strategy here, I believe. And I'm not that much of a Trump cheerleader. I just want our elected officials to work for us. Last year alone, China imported 5 million barrels of crude oil per day via the Strait of Hormuz. In response to the military strikes, Iran's Revolutionary Guard has warned ships to avoid passing through the Strait of Hormuz and has attacked oil tankers in the area. As a result, China's access to affordable oil from the Middle East has been restricted. Well, to be clear here, what we've learned is that shadow fleet tankers, those moving illicit oil So those tankers that are sailing specifically to China are turning off their transponders and not being attacked, obviously, by the Iranians. So those tankers are getting out, while the ones bound for Western ports and that are not being shipped from Iran, being shipped from other Gulf neighbors, are being attacked. Essentially, it goes on to say within 2 months, China has lost two important oil suppliers, which together representing 17% of its oil imports. Most of it comes from Russia now. The situation regarding oil prices could not have come at a worse time for China, as its economy is already facing significant challenges. The property market continues to decline, domestic consumption is weakening, and youth unemployment remains elevated at more than 20%. Adding to the Xi Jinping's troubles, the made in China surface-to-air missile systems that Iran recently acquired failed to intercept or significantly disrupt incoming missiles and aircraft from the U.S. and Israel, including advanced stealth platforms like the F-35 and the B-2 bombers, as well as standoff weapons, the cruise missiles. Compounding the humiliation, Chinese-supplied air defense systems, the HQ-9B variants in Iran reportedly failed to protect Iranian sites from stealth aircraft and missiles. Similar underperformance of Chinese-made weaponry has been observed in Venezuela during the U.S. operations and in Pakistan during its brief conflict with India. And to be fair, China doesn't sell its state-of-the-art systems that it uses to its allies. Mostly it's the model underneath. Now, the question was the Y-20, which is their most recent anti-ship missile, were those going to Iran? And that might have also spurred the attack by the United States. Or was it the Y-19, which are also very sophisticated? The Y-20 is obviously more, particularly in evading countermeasures. But the Y-19 is still terribly potent weapon. China further undermines its international standing by limiting its response to mere diplomatic condemnations and calls for a ceasefire. Such muted response reveals a pattern. Beijing prioritizes economic interests and self-preservation over ally security, and pledges to ally. That's what they don't understand about the United States, is when the United States says they're going to do something, usually they do. Some of those motivations are nefarious, to be fair. They always have an ulterior motive, especially corporate America. In any case, China is still far from matching the United States in terms of global military presence, alliance formation, currency influence, and soft power. Additionally, China is not yet able to effectively shape the international order or reliably defend its partners. These deficiencies are casting doubts about Xi's proclaimed inevitability of his China dream. In other words, it's been shattered by Donald Trump, because the real, and you have to divorce this from what corporations want, is access to natural resources like in Russia. What Trump wants is to end the adversary's ability to make things difficult for the United States and United States citizens. So China is the problem. If anybody's a student of foreign affairs, you'd know that China is the problem, not Russia. It's not that Russia doesn't meddle, but if you were to weigh intelligence operations of, let's say, China versus Russia, you would see that the former greatly overshadows the latter. Just the news: after Trump murder plot conviction, another IRGC asset charged with similar scheme remains in Iran. While one of the plotters behind the Iranian intelligence-linked assassination attempt against Donald Trump has been convicted in U.S. federal court, another man charged in a separate plot to assassinate the then candidate in 2024 is still believed to be hiding in Iran. Justice Department filed charges against Afghan national Farhad Shakiri and Pakistani national Asif Merchant for their alleged roles in the Iranian-backed assassination plots aimed at Trump. Shakiri was convicted for manslaughter in 1991, and by 2024, according to the Justice Department, was living in Iran and was an asset of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Shakiri was charged in Southern District of New York with murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, money laundering conspiracy, providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization, conspiring to provide material support for a foreign terror, and conspiracy to violate the International Economic Powers Act and sanctions against the government of Iran. Shakiri was tasked by the Iranian regime with surveilling and plotting to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump. And there's more. U.S. diplomatic facility in Iraq struck by drone. Pro-Iranian militias were likely behind the attack. Suspected retaliatory drone attack by pro-Iranian militias struck a major U.S. diplomatic facility in Baghdad. So that's in the green zone. Let's see if I can. If you just bear with me. We've got a lot to get through today, so I don't want to delay too much longer. But I didn't give you a proper story count, which I want to do, so we could all be proud in how much news we covered in an hour. And that's another reason it took me so long to get the live stream up this morning, was because there's a lot of news, and not cursory news that you could just look at the headline, but a lot of stuff that I had to read beforehand because there's a lot of news. A lot of news, a bunch of different subjects. I mean, we bounce around here quite a bit, but I want to get you everything. There's a lot of fraud news coming out. And of course, there's also a lot of election news, or should I say election integrity news, that has to be covered as well. And so I want to get to all of it. And I know I usually go over the allotted time frame of an hour, but, you know, we need to get through the news as quickly and effectively as possible. And there's a lot to get through, including this breaking news from the Associated Press. About 140 U.S. troops have been wounded in the Iran war, 8 severely. I imagine those include the dead. Other major developments, Pete Hegseth once again says that today will be yet again our most intense days of strikes inside Iran. Iran launched new attacks on Israel and Gulf countries, and the U.S. President Donald Trump gives contradictory messages. It's a short excursion, the straits will be open, oil prices will be lower, compared to that of the reality, which is like Iran is certainly not backing down. Are they holding back, or are they truly diminished? And what we are facing is certainly people are all freaked out about, oh my God, the Iranian sleeper cells have been triggered. How effective do you think these people are? I'm just asking. I don't think they're very effective at all. They have a large military force. They do have some advanced technology given to them by China, especially missile technology, which was actually given to them by the Clinton administration. I'm not going to go into that. But this is what we're worried about breaking. FBI discovers explosive residue in Pennsylvania storage unit believed to be connected to the New York City bombing attempt. ISIS-inspired attempted bombing in New York City that took place on Saturday. Ibrahim Qayyumi, 19, and Amir Balat, 18, are facing federal charges in connection with the attempted bombing. I'm suspect of this because it's always ISIS-inspired. These people are rife with intelligence connections. United States domestic intelligence, the FBI, that set these people up posing as ISIS telling them how to build bombs and telling them wrongly how to build bombs. And that's why these bombs never explode. Whether it's the pipe bombs left by the January 6th retard, the autistic, easily manipulated kid, and these kids that are easily fooled, obviously. So I think there's some domestic intelligence involvement here. Now, if the bomb went off, and it was also the way it was filmed, it was right in front of all these cameras. These kids are chucking things right in front of police. And it was like a Keystone Cop thing where the kid was running around and police were chasing him. It's ridiculous. More Fox News. Secret Service agents question driver suspicious vehicle near the White House. Multiple entrances and streets temporarily closed due to the investigation. And I'm going to just get it. Oh, hold on a second. Where is the story? Sorry about that. The New York Post driver detained after van plows through White House barricade. Van driver was arrested early Wednesday after crashing his vehicle through a security barricade through the White House. Washington's D.C. Metropolitan Police Department say they called to assist the Secret Service at 6:37 a.m. after the van drove through the barricade at Connecticut Avenue and H Street Northwest. No injuries were reported, and the van driver was not immediately identified. It was not immediately clear what charges, if any, they could face. Now, what do you mean drive through the barricade? Like forcibly? Was it a delivery or was it a truck bomb? President Trump was at the White House at the time of the incident. He's scheduled to travel to Ohio and Kentucky later Wednesday. Security at the sensitive sites around the country and the U.S. outposts around the world have been stepped up amid the ongoing Israel war and its 12th day. This one story was out of place. So. And I don't know where the rest of that text is. So the next story up is actually not going to be that story. Hold on a second. I just had a couple things out of place here. Three Toronto synagogues shot at in 5 days. This was an act of terror meant to intimidate and frighten our community, said the rabbi. Also, an update on this story is a follow-up. Post-millennial suspect in killing of the Pennsylvania state trooper spread far-left rhetoric online, may have family connection to law enforcement. And this guy, Elks, right, a Pennsylvania law enforcement source, confirmed that Facebook account showing far-left leanings belonged to Elks. At the top of the account, it states, "It's not my fault if reality is Marxist." One post stated, "I don't argue with people John Brown would have shot." John Brown was a 19th century abolitionist who was executed for his role in the failed raid at Harper's Ferry Federal Armory. He was the namesake for the John Brown Gun Club and its spin-offs, which are violent far left. So whether or not we know if Marxism or this guy's political bent had anything to do with him shooting this police officer. He just got pulled over right near his house. So who knows? But that's it. You know, if you're a Marxist, you're violent. You don't like cops. That make you Marxist. LA County hospice fraud. 89 providers registered to same building. This again is post-millennial. About 500 hospices are operating with a 3-mile radius, within 137 of them located on Van Nuys Boulevard alone. CBS News investigation has revealed indicators of widespread fraud occurring in California's hospice care industry, particularly in Los Angeles County. The report analyzed the current licenses and business records of roughly 1,800 hospice care centers in the county and found that over 700 of them, 42%, triggered red flags for fraud. This comes after the state of California issued a crackdown on the hospice care industry after 2023 state audit showed that California county hospices overbilled Medicare by $105 million in just 1 year, resulting in the revocation of 280 hospice licenses. Auditors were triggered to investigate the matter after seeing a 1,500% increase in hospice companies since 2010. Now there's more fraud. Zero Hedge. Seniors hit with billions in extra premiums from Medicare overpayments. Private insurers are padding their pockets with billions in alleged overpayments from Medicare Advantage. The amounts of roughly 10% higher costs, or more than $200 extra annually for the average senior on a fixed Social Security income. The impact extends beyond enrollees in Medicare Advantage plans. Traditional Medicaid beneficiaries are also paying higher premiums to help subsidize the private plan's gains. In other words, as we knew, Obamacare and socialized medicine largely, especially in this country, was just meant to bilk the consumer, and the profits go into the insurance companies. Because as you find out, is what I'm finding out also, is that I just believe that you pay into this thing, and then when you hit retirement age, you get free health care. That's not true. You get subsidized health care. You still have to pay. And it comes right out of your Social Security. So if your Social Security only amounts to a few $100s a month, a few $100s of that is going to be taken out to pay for your health care. On California, the boom in autism therapy is Medicaid's fastest growing jackpot. In 2023, the state paid Megan Mitchell's company, Piece by Piece Autism Centers, $29 million to provide therapy to just 84 patients, about $340,000 per child. Is that good value for your money? Well, the people that pay, or Medicaid that pays, right? They never see the bill, they never see the outlay, they don't know. But $340,000 per year per child. More fraud. The Federalist. Labor Department has done nothing to recover about $500 million in suspected COVID fraud. Congress has created a leviathan too big to manage, giving fraudsters an easy opportunity to pick taxpayers' pockets by the millions and billions. Noted 3 years ago that the federal auditors estimate that between $100 billion and $135 billion, or roughly $900 billion, and COVID-related unemployment benefits constituted fraud. But even though enforcement efforts have recouped on the taxpayer's behalf a mere fraction of that amount, government officials appear unwilling to act when nearly $1 billion of potentially recoverable cash lies right underneath their noses. According to the Inspector General's testimony, his office found a total of $720 million in potentially fraudulently obtained funds being held by 2 banks. Worse yet, the $720 million in funds is not yet surrendered to the unclaimed property laws. Almost $473 million, or nearly 2/3, had previously been flagged. Those flags came as part of an Inspector General report. In other words, banks and the Department of Labor had known about roughly $500 million in potentially fraudulent funds just sitting in these prepaid cards accounts for over 3 years, yet they have done exactly nothing about it. So they didn't pay that back to the taxpayer or put it in another account. It just sits there, for the next pandemic? There's more fraud. New York Post. SBA boss, that's the Small Business Association boss, Kelly Loeffler, announces state-by-state fraud crackdown, touts 54% headcount slash. Loeffler, who paused some SBA loans to Minnesota last year and whose agency has been probing alleged theft of taxpayer money in California, told Miranda Devine of the New York Post, very These are two of very large offender states. We are just going state by state. We have other programs. This isn't just the COVID era that we're looking at, but also going to make sure that we contribute meaningfully to Vice President J.D. Vance's fraud task force that he's heading up, which is so important to the American people. Currently, Loeffler said she was investigating a program, almost $50 billion program that we run that has never been audited, that is rife with waste and fraud. No one had ever thought to audit the program, of course. Nobody likes to hear the word audit, but especially some of the government programs certainly should be, because anything the government pays out is vulnerable to fraud. Because as soon as you say the government has funds available for those who, you could stop right there and all the crooks' ears perk up and they go, what money? Where? How do I apply? Oh, it's only available to autism health centers. Well, maybe I'll start one of those. Washington Times, article number 23, Loudoun Sheriff says cooperating with ICE makes county safer. Indeed, it does. Just the News, article number 24, top DOJ prosecutor says tens of thousands of non-citizens on the voter rolls, dozens illegally voted. Oh, big surprise. It's really frustrating that we're being prevented from doing our job, says Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, criticizing state election officers and federal judges who are blocking her office from her historic effort to obtain and review every state's voter roll ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And why are they blocking her from doing so? Because if you have something to hide, that's what you do. You hide it. We're finding tens of thousands of non-citizens on their voter rolls, hundreds of thousands of dead people on the voter rolls, and duplicate registration between states. Earlier this month, the DOJ announced it is indicted an illegal alien from Africa who illegally voted in several federal elections in Pennsylvania. Federal law prohibits foreigners from voting in federal elections. And although people like Margaret Brennan keep saying that, that doesn't mean that they don't, because if you don't enforce a law, it is hardly a law. And certainly if there's no enforcement, people don't pay attention to that law. America Act. Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune, establishment Republican rhino, made remarks to reporters on Tuesday claiming that the votes just aren't there for a talking filibuster in response to increasing GOP pressure to pass the Save America Act. Why don't you at least try? It supersedes everything else. Trump says must go to the front of the line. I, as president, will not sign other bills until this is passed. And so John Thune sees his opportunity and says, good, So we will again not enact legislation because of politicians. Who is not voting for election integrity? Who is not voting to get rid of mail-in ballots? Who isn't? It's not publicly known, because when you're whipping, it's not until the vote is cast that we know how people vote. But during the whip process, we don't know who's not going along. I mean, Mitch McConnell, Murkowski, Susan Collins, Thune, Hornan, we don't know how the people, who's voting against election integrity. Just the News, Minnesota school districts allowed race-based teacher stipends. I mean, this is more fraud. I mean, it's more than 50,000 Minnesota K-12 school districts have adopted a policy allowing taxpayer funds to support certain race-based programs to attract teachers of color. These policies reflect a deeply entrenched far-left ideology throughout the entire Minnesota education system that flies in the face of long-standing jurisprudence on historic sacrifices civil rights leaders and supporters have made over the decades. These policies and practices are immoral and anti-American and must be stopped. Yeah, I don't believe anything should be race-based. Merit-based. Race-based things, you could take private funds, start a program to help people of color or Native Americans, whatever you want to call them, to get involved in education. But the problem is using taxpayer funds to fund something that discriminates on the base of race, right? That shouldn't be done with public funds. You know, if your government is going to be secular for the purpose of being fair, then it also should be colorblind. Not saying that you can't privately push programs, but don't do it with public money. And then what you're doing is you're pushing people that are lower on the merit scale up into positions they might not deserve based on merit. Okay. Mayor of Chicago, just the news. Mayor of Chicago proposes election-related ordinance 6 days before primary. And what is this? Again, this is more race-based bullshit. A proposal by Mayor Brandon Johnson said it was provoked by President Donald Trump's administration. The mayor said that Reverend Jesse Jackson Fair Access to Democracy ordinance would protect poll workers, voters, and election-related activities. The mayor is trying to send a message to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement that it will not be able to visit polling places. It's the typical Democratic machine, communist leadership that we've seen play out since Brandon Johnson has been in office since 2023. So basically what he's doing is he's outlawing Border Patrol and ICE to police polling stations for illegal immigrants. And again, you don't want voter integrity? Brandon Johnson, do you think illegal immigrants should vote in federal elections? Would you like to see them vote? Do you think they should be able? I'm not saying if it's legal. We all know it's not legal. But do you think they should be able to vote? Because I think that's what he's getting at here. Because why would you fear? You would fear getting deported because if you're in the country illegally and you're going to vote in federal elections. There's a disconnect there. People like do things and then you're like, dude, you're implicating yourself. No, I'm not. Fox News, Valerie Jarrett earned $740,000 as Obama insiders filled top roles during $850 million presidential center build. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Is that she got paid an annual income of $740,000. Also, James Comer says Trump DOJ asked New Mexico officials to end Jeffrey Epstein investigation. This is from Mediaite, though. And what you don't understand about this article is the fact that this was in his first term. And so his Department of Justice was in complete disarray. It wasn't his Department of Justice because his Attorney General recused himself from everything. And who was running it? Who was running it? Some establishment prick, that little dweeb with the glasses. So it wasn't Trump that ended the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch. It was the other douchebags at the DOJ, which was compromised. If you know anything about what's going on here. Fuck Marjorie Taylor Greene. I used to like her, but for her to just quit, fucking baby, puts us in a precarious position. One American News, Trump endorsed Clay Fuller and Democrat Sean Harris advanced a runoff in Georgia's 14th district race to replace MTG. Marjorie Taylor Greene kept saying, oh, don't worry, mine is a solid red district. We don't have to worry about losing the majority because of me. And that's just not true. Now, some science news, male fertility rates crash as doctor reveal health threat. Something is very wrong. Lifestyle factors like obesity and smoking likely contribute to infertility, experts say. You know, to be fair here, I don't like the subhead from Fox. That's not the reason. We're going to get to the reason because do they read their own copy before they put the subhead in? Reality is more complicated, according to experts who recently spoke to National Geographic. Although it's not clear that the decline is at a stage where it should be considered a crisis, it sure is. Numbers show that overall fertility, demographically measured by the number of babies born compared to women of childbearing age, has decreased. This is the canary in the coal mine. It signifies that something is very wrong with our current environment, as lower sperm counts predict morbidity and mortality. Poor semen parameters are associated with other medical conditions and may signal underlying metabolic, wait for it, hormonal or environmental issues. Hormonal environmental issues. There is some evidence of endocrine disrupting chemicals, which are substances found in reusable plastics and some disposable products, altering male fertility. Hormonal or environmental issues. Are these hormonal and environmental issues? Of course they are. And of course, environmental issues also have a lot to do with young kids miss the pandemic's school disruptions. Their reading scores are still behind. Because of their smartphones, cell phones, computers, kids don't read. Most people don't read. Most people don't read. And it's a shame, because reading isn't not only enjoyable, but it's the best way for you to retain information.
Less than 3% of you people read books.
Zero Hedge, are bad bots taking over the web? So now you have most of the kids, instead of sitting and reading books, what are they doing? They're on the internet trying to find out information. But what else is on the internet? They're bad bots. So when you think you're talking to somebody, a lot of times you aren't talking to anybody. Zero Hedge has this graph. You see in 2018, 62% of human traffic was humans. Now it's only 49% compared to 37% bad bots, 14% good bots. There's no purpose. There's really no purpose to good bots. Bad bots, malicious bots, are taking over. I mean, we still have a little ways to go, but when it gets to be about half the internet traffic, and artificial intelligence is also accelerating this. American greatness has the story. The global elites lose again. Germany's alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, keeps surging ahead. Border control, insane energy policies. In Europe's future, after all. And people say, oh, the AfD, it's like the Nazis. They're not the Nazis. They're the biggest part of their platform is anti-immigration. Oh, it's racist. It's anti-Muslim. It's Islamophobic. It isn't. And their problems with having huge surges of immigrants come in and then they don't assimilate and you get enclaves. And the problem is now with the welfare state, then in the enclaves, people just don't work. It's not like Little Italy where they built their own little towns and they had commerce just amongst themselves, or Chinatown, et cetera, et cetera. Growing numbers of the German public defy their overseers and welcome the AfD as an antidote to the EU Davis philosophy of open borders and deindustrialization and immiseration that go under the banner of climate-friendly energy policy. The AfD polls second nationally to the Christian Democratic Union. The CDU was once the cornerstone of post-war conservatism, but its leaders have pulled it to the left in order to marginalize the AfD. And I think that's it for us, right? Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the podcast. I had some texts from one of the stories we got into earlier. Iran betting it can outlast U.S. by holding the global energy market hostage forever. If you can tolerate oil prices above $200 per barrel, continue this game, said Iran. and that they want to strangle the Strait of Hormuz. Good luck. Thanks again for joining me today. Appreciate you. Didn't have an episode of Tuesdays with Perry last night. We couldn't make it happen as it approached 9 o'clock. We're gonna try to get a Wednesday edition of Tuesdays with Perry tonight. So stay tuned for that. We go live about 9:15. All right, remember you're under attack psychologically and biologically, as the sperm count shows that you're under attack biologically. And psychologically, when you're looking at news about the war, you're never going to get the full picture. Usually, they paint a rosy face on it, the prosecutors of the war from either side. I hope it ends soon for Trump's sake and for the United States' sake. Thanks again for joining me today. See you tomorrow. Respect.
This is all a conspiracy. Don't you know that it's a conspiracy?